Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, continuing our discussion with Ambassador Meligy. Your Excellency, now, only today, our Foreign Minister, Sameh Shoukry, met with the UN Humanitarian and Reconstruction Coordinator for the Gaza Strip, Sigrid Kaag, and they spoke about the reconstruction work and the role of UNRWA within the Gaza Strip. And we've known Egypt had a plan of a $500 million plan for the reconstruction of Gaza, obviously before October 7th. How would you rate the efforts now dealing with the Palestinian refugees, the role being played by UNRWA? Now everybody is declaring a situation of extreme starvation for the Palestinians in Gaza. What's the situation with UNRWA?
Well, this is a very tricky issue, actually. I mean, we have to go a little bit back in time to remember how this organization was created. As we all know, UNRWA is only designated to deal with the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian refugees. And in this regard, I would like to say that, once again, we have to forget about the narrative that we've always heard. And maybe one of the few times that I would agree with the Israelis, that later on we have to abolish the work of UNRWA. I agree with the Israelis that we have to abolish UNRWA. Why is UNRWA only dealing with Palestinian? Actually, this was a prerequisite of the Israelis when it was created, so that when it's abstracted, it's abstracting only the Palestinian rights and the right of refugees to come back. While any refugee in the world is dealt with by United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the UNHCR, which is the body entitled to deal with refugees. Only the Palestinians are dealt with through the UNRWA. So when Israel is abstracting its work, it's only abstracting the Palestinians, but not the rest of the world. And I believe that the Palestinians should be treated equally as the rest of the refugees of the world and dealt with through the UNHCR, including the right of return of the Palestinians, which is why in the first place the Israeli refused that the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees deal with the Palestinian issue in order to be able to manipulate it as much as it wants. So once again, I believe that maybe at the current moment it is not the time to talk about this point. But we have to remember it, because at a later stage we have to deal with the Palestinian cause like any other refugee situation in the world, not specifically with a certain body that could be abstracted or let go as much as they want. The Israelis would not be able to abstract the UNHCR the way they do with the UNRWA. And that's why I believe that this body, for the time being, we need it, because it's the only one on the ground that is able of distributing the humanitarian aid, the medical aid, and everything. Let's not forget that although they had around 150 of their personnel killed, and this did not suscite any provocation, any reaction from the Western world. On the contrary, the minute that we heard about, I think, 12 of its personnel that might be involved, and by the way, until today, Israel never presented any evidence that there were those people, except some reports written in some newspapers, Israeli newspapers, convicting those Palestinians of participating in the attacks of the 7th of October. This is the only evidence, but this was quite enough for, I think, around 15 Western countries and Japan to suspend its funding for the UNRWA. So you see how the balance is. They wouldn't have been able to do that if we are talking about the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. And this is what should happen. And that's why I agree with the Israelis that the Palestinians should be dealt with like any other refugee situation, the same way, equally. But this is at a first step. But at second stage, I think that this decision by many countries to suspend the funding for the organization is hurting the refugees. Those countries are claiming to be sympathizing with. So I wonder exactly what is their position. Are they really sympathizing with the Palestinian refugees and the Palestinian crisis that is going on right now in Gaza, or they just want them to die just like Israelis want them to die? I hope that we will see a retreat of this position and that UNRWA can again resume its works and the funding will continue to flow regularly in order to facilitate and alleviate the life of those Palestinians who are really suffering right now, as we've seen. I mean, we are seeing right now people dying from starvation, and so it's not a joke anymore. It's not just, it's a black tragedy, actually, and we hope that the world will wake up to that.
Yes. Well, there are attacks that are taking place in Ramallah as well and the West Bank, and we've seen a 16-year-old boy, actually, who died recently as well. Many detainees, hundreds of people injured and killed as well. Now, does the situation and the aggression on the Gaza Strip, I mean, it is already around the rest of Palestine and the West Bank, but are we starting to see bigger moves and much more aggression on the West Bank and Ramallah, where the Palestinian Authority is? I mean, even if a truce is being brokered within the Gaza Strip during the holy month of Ramadan, are we witnessing a big risk taking place at the West Bank?
Well, first of all, this assures all of us and the rest of the world that the West Bank and Gaza is one unit. And if Gaza is suffering, so is the West Bank. So, I mean, there is no point in even thinking about two different entities. It's one entity. That's number one important thing that we've seen. The war on the West Bank never stopped. Actually, it has its ups and its downs, but it never stopped, even from the 7th of October and before that. So the idea is to continue the imposing the power of force on the Palestinian in the West Bank. Don't you think that you are immune from our forces? We can hurt you whenever we want. And actually, if you recall, I mean, it wasn't very far from the headquarters of the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah, where they did their strike today. So, and this is another message given that don't think that you, because you are the officials of the Palestinian Authority, that you are immune, or because we signed with you the Oslo Agreement some time ago that you are, we are spared from our strikes. No, we can strike you anytime we want, the way we desire. And of course, you know, the airspace above the West Bank and of course on Gaza is totally free for the Israeli Air Force to strike whenever they want, and with the same, with the power that they want to strike it with. So this is number two. So I think that this is maybe preparing the stage for something maybe bigger at a later stage after Gaza. But for the time being, let's consider that this was just a small message given to the Palestinian to behave according to the Israeli norms. And we will wait until we break this deal, and maybe then things can be quieter so we can start talking.
Yes. Well, there's been a lot of talk regarding the spillover of this aggression and the conflict into wider regions. Now we're seeing the attacks taking place on Lebanon and Hezbollah. Hundreds are killed, thousands are being displaced, and there are investigations regarding the casualties there. Are they civilians? Are they members of Hezbollah? How do you see the situation taking place between the Israeli side and Lebanon, especially even if a truce is being brokered during the month of Ramadan?
Well, Israel wants always to send messages. I mean, after all, the war with the Lebanese is still contained. I mean, it's not like the invasion that we've seen before. So it's only strikes from here and from there, leaving a certain number of casualties here and there. But it's still contained. I mean, there is no border crossing from both sides. Of course, we've seen aerial attacks from the Israelis. We've seen some responding with from the Lebanese side. However, it did not amount to the level that we can say there is a war that broke between the two countries. But of course, it's a message to the Lebanese not to get involved, to Hezbollah, and of course behind it, Iran, not to get involved in any way. And that Israel, although it's focused on Gaza, but that doesn't mean that it forgets that there is another border on the northern side, which is South Lebanon, and that we are ready to strike any time in the neighboring country as long as we see it fit. In short, Israel is doing whatever it can and wants and desire as long as nobody is stopping it. And the idea of stopping it will not come from our side as much as it's going to come from the main ally and the strategic defense of Israel, which is the United States. Without real pressure from the United States, this war will not stop. Israel is doing whatever it wants, anytime it desires, if it suits it to do so, simply because nobody can stop it, unless we are going to enter a war, which the Arab countries want to avoid, simply because this would mean destruction of their economy that is fragile already. Yes. They wouldn't want to go into a long war with Israel that is having unlimited support and refueling of the war machine from the United States. So Israel doesn't have anything to worry about. I mean, it doesn't have a limited resources in any way. So it continues to do so as long as it have unlimited resources to weaponry and to munition. So that's why it continues. It's very simple. I mean, the idea of how to see this war is very simple. As long as there is no real pressure, and we haven't seen real pressure. Even the words of the vice president yesterday is not that, I mean, the words are strong, but actually, as usually the American like to say this, put your money where your mouth is. Where is the acts? Where are the acts that you are planning to do in order to stop the Israelis from doing what they are doing? Until we see something more than the sweet talk or even the tough love, then nothing is going to happen. We need to have real strength, real pressure, then Israel will stop. At this point, Israel will understand that the United States mean no jokes, and that it wanted to stop here. President Biden have said it. I need a ceasefire now. But what are you doing to get this ceasefire? That's the point, not your wish. We totally respect your wish and your willingness to achieve it, but do it.
Your Excellency, so Israel would only respond to pressure or influence by the US, but now Egypt and Qatar as well, along with Hamas, are participating within this deal, trying to broker a ceasefire. Now, what about the role of Egypt and Qatar? Are we there just to soften the talk between all parties? Are we adding a sweetener to the deal? How are we applying any sort of influence in such a deal?
Well, this is one part, what you just mentioned. This is one part which is to soften the tone between the two parties, especially that we have relations with the two parties. We have relations with Hamas through the Qataris, and we have relations with the Israelis. But I think there is a little bit more into that. We've heard in several reports that Egypt is putting some pressure on Hamas to accept some conditions that it previously refused to accept in order to spare lives of Palestinians that are perishing in the last few weeks. And from here we heard some tone from Hamas that is softer than before. And I think Egypt has a lot to do with that, to say that we mean business as well. Hamas, you have to accept these conditions. This is the best we could get under the pressure that the Palestinian people are supposedly having right now. I mean, there is always this attack on Rafah that could be imminent. It could happen any moment if the Hamas would not submit a little bit and downgrade a little bit with its demands. So I think it's not just about just softening the thing, but it's more of certain kind of pressure, not to reach a point where there is a total surrender from Hamas, but at the same time, not to be a hardliner with what you demand in the light of the current situation where you are military having serious problems. Your people are dying. So we have to accept some compromises in order to have this deal see through.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you've heard, it basically needs both parties to actually have some compromises, and maybe our mediators would be able to apply some sort of influence and pressure to be able to broker a ceasefire deal before the month of Ramadan that would give a chance for all the sufferings of the Gazans to be alleviated during that month. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank my distinguished guest, Ambassador Medhat Meligy, the former Assistant Foreign Minister. Your Excellency, always a pleasure having you with us on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Night International. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.